Happening now, local state representatives are speaking out following the repeal of 50A, a major civil rights law here in New York. Plus, Jamestown Police Chief Harry Snellings plans to retire at the end of next month.
Well, it's a little bit more cloudier than it was yesterday, and we've got some severe thunderstorms on the way for tonight, and very humid for today. We'll talk about it next. The News at Noon starts right now.
Live and on demand, this is WNY News Now.
And thanks for joining us for WNY News Now on this Wednesday. I'm Justin Gould. The City of Jamestown's police chief says he will be retiring next month. Jamestown Police Chief Harry Snellings telling WNY News Now yesterday his last day on the job will be July 10th. He says after 24 years in Jamestown, he plans to take time to spend with family. Snellings began his career back in 1996 with the Jamestown Police's Patrol Division. During his time in the department, he led the SWAT team, served as training director, team commander, and platoon commander. He was first appointed to lead the agency in 2013, succeeding Police Chief Rex Rader. The chief served 3 terms at the head of the department. His current term was set to expire December 31st, 2021. Now, in order to fill the position, Jamestown Mayor Eddie Sundquist will need to name a successor. That candidate will need to be confirmed by the Jamestown City Council. The mayor says he will be working to find a qualified candidate to fill the position in the coming weeks as the chief begins to wind down his career with the city over the next month. Well, in a sweeping change to a section of New York's civil rights law, state lawmakers voted yesterday to repeal 50A, making police personnel records public. Now, both State Senator George Borrello and Assemblyman Andy Goodell voted against the repeal. Under 50A, home addresses, personal phone numbers, and emails of officers and their families were protected. The Senator Borrello says that the repeal does not provide police due process. He says, unlike other professions, the repeal prevents unsubstantial claims from first responder records. The senator says that the misstep in the repeal was discussed prior to the vote.
During the floor debate, the sponsor of the legislation was asked, why did you not change the public officers law so that unsubstantiated claims would be removed from those records? And the response was, just because it's unsubstantiated doesn't mean it didn't happen.
Now, eliminating the law makes complaints against officers, as well as transcriptions and final depositions of disciplinary proceedings public for the first time in decades. Assemblyman Andy Goodell says that he was for some modifications of 50A, just not the full repeal.
I would support legislation that made it clear that founded complaints should be public and available for inspection.
Now, Governor Andrew Cuomo, who has recently supported reforming the law, has said in the wake of protests that he will sign the repeal. Only Delaware has a similar law to 50A. Well, several communities around the nation are discussing if and how they'll undergo reform with their local law enforcement agencies in the wake of the murder of African-American George Floyd in Minneapolis last month. Now, history, like the Crusades and the uprising of ISIS, suggests that racism will still exist even after police experience change, because an idea can't be completely eradicated from someone's mind. The Congressman Reed, though, explained that during a conference call with WNY News Now and other reporters yesterday, that the best way to combat the racial divide is for leaders and citizens to talk to one another and listen to what everyone is feeling and experiencing.
We each come from these issues from our own perspective. We don't walk in other people's shoes, and other people have a view and an experience that is unique to them. But what we can try to do is each and every day try to challenge ourselves by truly listening and trying to walk in another person's shoes, knowing that we'll never be able to walk in those footsteps. But we can do the best we can to try to understand that perspective and where that is coming from.
Reed says he recently met with 30 to 40 protesters in Elmira who disagreed with what they think the congressman stands for. He says he hoped he inspired them to protest and participate in dialogue with their leaders and other citizens. Well, yesterday in Houston, the final goodbye to George Floyd, an emotional funeral for the man whose death began a nationwide movement. Camille Burnell has more on the ceremony and how national lawmakers are now continuing the conversation for what's next.
I'm going to miss my brother a whole lot.
At a time of reflection, a call for action.
America, it is time for a change. Even if it shall begin with more protests, no justice, no peace.
Friends and family members laid George Floyd to rest Tuesday afternoon in Houston. The 46-year-old was killed more than 2 weeks ago, igniting nationwide outrage over police brutality.
We speak and we decree and we declaim that right now, Lord God, there shall be justice.
At the funeral, hope for a silver lining amidst the tragedy.
George Floyd changed the world, and we're going to make the world know that he made a difference.
Around the country, a push for sweeping police reform measures. Some, including the Minneapolis City Council, believe defunding the police and remodeling the force while reallocating funds to other areas is the answer.
We need to make deeper change than we have in the past.
Both President Trump and his Democratic opponent, Joe Biden, have spoken out against defunding the police. Congresswoman Karen Bass, who helped craft a sweeping Democratic proposal for police reform, agrees.
I don't think that that's the appropriate thing to do.
But those who have been protesting for days want change. Whether Floyd's death can bridge the gap between both sides will become apparent soon enough. In Minneapolis, I'm Camila Burnell reporting.
Camila, thank you. In addition for calling for a national ban on chokeholds, some lawmakers want greater accountability for no-knock warrants and uses of force. Well, a parade honoring students at Randolph Central School is scheduled to take place this Friday. Courtney Almeida, she's the director of pupil services at the district, says that there has been a long-running tradition there for elementary students to be waved goodbye to, part of a final farewell at the end of school. Now, this year, because of COVID-19, school officials thought it would be appropriate to host a district-wide send-off for everyone.
This parade is a great way to really highlight what Randolph Central School is with our community. We're really tight-knit, and we have missed everyone so immensely through this process, and it's just one last, we love you guys, and we're thinking of you, and we miss you, and we can't wait to see you guys and wrap up the year at least with a little bit of our, normalcy tradition as waving goodbye.
Now, Almeida says that vehicles and school buses will be decorated with school colors. In addition, the school mascot will also be on hand to spread some spirit. Now, the parade is scheduled to take place Friday starting at 9 a.m. with a route that spans most of the district. However, the school says they wish they could have drove by every house but are unable to because of the extensive geographic mileage there. Instead, the community is encouraged to view the route online and find a safe spot along the route to watch the parade. Certainly pretty cool to see, and we see that in many communities across the area now because of COVID-19 and schooling done remotely for pretty much everyone, that they're coming together with whether it be a parade or some sort of send-off gathering or virtual meeting. So it's really great to see that cooperation there, and we plan to have crews there on Friday to catch some of the action there in Randolph. Well, we hope everybody is having a great day, and we thank you so much for joining us here on WNY News Now as we continue to put local coverage first in our coverage of news. Good to see Jessica. Hopefully you're doing well. Good to see Cody. Thanks for joining us on the broadcast. Good to see Ralph. Wendy, happy Wednesday to you. Always thankful to have you here every day, Wendy. Well, we appreciate viewers like you who continue to join us. Good to see Dawn. Good to see Rebecca, Elizabeth, Connie. Good to see you. And good to see Joseph as well. Well, let's switch gears now and get a check of our First Defense weather forecast. That's where we find Chief Forecaster Dakota Hunter, who's standing by with that. And Mr. Hunter, I've heard a little bit of chatter on the weather line today. It seems like, especially tonight, we could be getting into some pretty strong thunderstorms moving across our area.
Yeah, and we will be. But before we get to the thunderstorms, we have to go through this afternoon another warm and muggy day, actually much more muggier than it was yesterday. This is a live look over Presque Isle Beach. The place to be today, I'm telling you. You can see the camera bouncing with that southwest wind of 18, but look at that temperature, already up to 82 degrees at Presque Isle Beach. Now, we have more clouds that are starting to fill in this afternoon, so there's not going to be as much sunshine as we had yesterday, but the sunshine we already have has heated the air, and that's going to actually make the air unstable going into tonight. That's going to be one of the key factors we're going to keep an eye on as we go into tonight, how unstable the air is before the cold front moves through. Right now, 81 here in town, 89 already at Dunkirk, 88 in Erie, and 79 in Olean, but that's not the bigger deal. The bigger deal is the dew point temperature. Again, dew point measures the moisture content in the atmosphere. The closer together the air temperature and the dew point are, the more humid it is. 70 is the current dew point in basically over in Cat County right now. Also in Dunkirk. Also Jamestown, we're all running about the lower 70s, 71 in Erie. That's basically tropical-like humidity. So again, you're going to be feeling it as you walk outside today. And again, the Storm Prediction Center maintains the slight risk, a level 2 out of 5 for basically tonight into early tomorrow morning. We'll time it out a little bit later on in the show and give you all the details. So basically through the afternoon today is going to be the hottest day of 2020 so far this year. Near tropical-like humidity, very warm, very humid, late day thunder showers, 85 to 94, but there will be a healthy south breeze, 10 to 15, but a hot wind doesn't really make you feel any better. But the cold front passage tonight ushers in cooler air. We'll talk about it next in a few minutes. Justin?
All right, Dakota, looking forward to that. Thank you very much. Coming up, the Democratic candidate for Chautauqua County's Assembly seat, you see there, joins us live next to talk about her campaign and the current state in Albany and around the district. Stay with us as WNY News Now continues.
With coverage that matters. This is WNY News Now.
EagleZip.com is your local one-stop shop for all of your home and business computer needs. Located on Fluvan Avenue Extension, just outside of Jamestown, EagleZip.com sells and services all brands of desktops and laptops, as well as servers and network equipment for your business. All new computer sales include transferring your data from your old computer, plus a 2-year warranty. Call EagleZip.com today.
Stop by EagleZip.com today and let us make computers easy for you.
When you're on the go, stay in the know by downloading the WNY News Now mobile app. Stay up to date on local news, weather, and sports that matter to you. Plus, subscribe to breaking news and weather alerts from the team that puts coverage first. In addition, watch news as it happens with the Southern Tier's only 24/7 streaming network. Download the WNY News Now app right now. It's free on the Apple App Store and Google Play Store.
You're watching WNY News Now, where coverage comes first.
And welcome back to WNY News Now. Christina Cardinale, the Democrat candidate for Chautauqua County's State Assembly seat, joins us live to talk about her campaign and the current theater there in Albany and here locally. Christina, thanks for joining us today. It's great to have you here.
Hi, thank you for having me.
First, I wanted to ask about some of our top news today. Lawmakers voted yesterday to repeal the section of 50A in the New York State Civil Rights Law, which now makes police personnel records public. State Senator George Borrello, as well as your opponent, Assemblyman Goodell, both voted against that repeal, saying it went too far. What is your take on the action to repeal, and do you believe that it went far enough?
Well, I won't say this often, but I do understand my opponent and also Senator Borrello's opinion. You know, when we are passing or voting on anything, we do want to consider due process. We do want to consider if rights are being infringed upon. And I can absolutely understand their position that it is a little bit extreme, but ultimately we are living in an extreme world, and we have to start making some extreme decisions to change things for the better.
Now, 2 years ago, area native Judy Inock challenged Goodell for his assembly seat. During an event here in Jamestown, she told us that she wanted to foster strong relationships with local law enforcement. Do you share similar goals with Inock, and what can you do to help build those relationships?
I do. I agree with Judy very much in the sense that we don't want to divide the law enforcement of Chautauqua County with our citizens. And I think that starts with having conversations like we had at the Jamestown protest. They had an open dialogue. They communicated. They had a tough conversation, and that's what's necessary. We have to have uncomfortable conversations. We have to open up a dialogue. We have to address issues as citizens and as well as law enforcement, and find collaboration.
And I know you attended that protest Sunday, the most recent one here in Jamestown. And really, we've seen since hearing the public call to action for officials, we've seen governments at all levels here, nationally, state, and especially here locally, call for those police reforms in the wake of the murder of Minneapolis man George Floyd. Do you believe that police reform is really needed here locally in Chautauqua County? And if so, what kind of changes are necessary?
Yes, I do. I think police reform is necessary in Chautauqua County. I can absolutely recognize that our law enforcement in Chautauqua County isn't as flawed as some, but I will say that reform is necessary. I think that the reform starts with passing legislation on my end to make things. We have to figure out a way that we are protecting our citizens, but we are also protecting our law enforcement. And I think one of the biggest things that we can do is we can focus on the use of body cameras. We can start implementing rules for body cameras. You know, there's an all-inclusive standard for body cameras. If you report to a scene as a police officer, you turn it on immediately. You film what is happening. There is a record of what is happening. You make sure that it is all-inclusive. There aren't starts and stops to your video. So then later, when that footage is viewed, there are no questions. There are no he said, she said this. You know, we have to be more reformed when it comes to documentation of citizen and law enforcement interaction. And I think, you know, there are certain standards that we could start to uphold, just like the example that I just gave, to really refine what's happening.
And we've seen locally that departments have already deployed body cameras. I know just this week, the Chautauqua County Sheriff's Office actually posted video on their Facebook page of an interaction between a motorcyclist and a deputy. And they were just showing the professionalism of the deputy and the motorcyclist, who was respectful to the officer, requested permission to get off of the bike, and really it was all over a tag on the back of the vehicle. The license plate was sideways, and the deputy was just saying, hey, you can't have it that way. And it boiled down to the officer was trying to actually help him find a way to mount it correctly. Seeing that locally and seeing that we already have body cameras, do you think that's one big reason why we don't see these horrible incidences of police brutality like we saw with Mr. Floyd here?
I think the example we just talked about is a very good example of how Chautauqua County does lead by example, and they do a good job. I think that they can do better. I think that everyone can do better. And I think that that kind of leads into the conversation of, can we find a universal standard for body camera involvement and operation? And can this be implemented in every state? Can we talk about maybe federal funding? So all body cameras are operated the same, and you know, we live in a great country. Every state is different. We can operate as states individually, but when it comes to certain matters like this, I think there should be a universal standard. And I think that by having some rigid just foundation of how we're operating things, that could prevent some of the issues that we're experiencing as a country.
Yeah, and for that unrest that we've seen with protests, and we've seen, unfortunately, some of it become violent nationwide, but here in Jamestown, we've remained peaceful. Why do you think people are so passionate about taking to the streets, specifically here? Yourself, you attended rallies over the weekend. Why now call for that change?
I don't think it's necessarily now. I think we are looking at 400 years of oppression, and the murder of George Floyd is the thing that really pushed this over the edge. And I think that we have been ignoring the oppression of Black people, and we have been ignoring systemic racism since the beginning. And people are calling for change. People are unifying. Our younger generation is out there. We have these 17, 18-year-old younger adults, and they are protesting, and they have a voice, and they want to see change. So I think that we are really looking at a paradigm shift all across our country. That includes Chautauqua County. I know demographically, we do not have as much of a diverse community as some bigger cities. However, people experience racism in this county. I know they do. I've seen it. I know what happens. So everyone is coming together to demand change.
Now, we have learned throughout history that an idea, no matter how repulsive it could be, can't completely be eradicated from society. From your perspective as both a political candidate as well as a community leader, what can we do to rise above racism, knowing that in the past we've tried to combat it, but it just doesn't go away?
When you talk about eliminating racism, you really are talking about eliminating the way people are raised, the way people think, generational attitudes and generational passed down traditions. I think if you really want to seriously talk about eliminating racism, let's talk about how we teach our youth. When I went to school, I never learned any Black history. I never had a Black teacher. We did not talk about important issues. We talked about the Civil War, but we never talked about the 13th Amendment. And we never went into detail about the issues that led to the Civil War and the issues afterward. It was glossed over. And I remember being a 17-year-old kid, and I said to my teachers, we're talking about the Civil War. We are talking about the events before and the events after. Why aren't we addressing the start of the KKK? Why aren't we having those conversations? Why aren't we addressing where this came from and when it started? And I was told that that is a controversial subject. And my response to that is, yeah, it is. And it's important to look at our history and look what we've done as a country. And if we shy away from uncomfortable conversations, how are we supposed to fix our issues? How can we fix the mistakes that we have made if we ignore the mistakes that we have made? So I think ultimately we should really look at this from an educational standpoint. Teach what's going on now, teach what happened then. Let's talk about uncomfortable things. Let's talk about Emmett Till. Let's talk about the movement after the civil rights. And the 13th Amendment has a loophole that says you are a free American citizen unless you're incarcerated, and we exploited that loophole. So I think there are a lot of conversations to be had, and we can't expect to move forward unless we educate ourselves.
Now, we've seen here that the world seems to be so volatile right now. Everyone is so polarized. Last week, you reached out to our newsroom after receiving threats of violence online. Since taking that story to the news, have the threats stopped? And why do you think people are so hostile, especially on a platform like social media?
I think it's related, not necessarily to racism, but I think we are once again recognizing that groups of people are marginalized, groups of people are stereotyped, and that's what I faced. I was being stereotyped as a Democrat, and with that label came assumptions of wanting to infringe on the rights of Americans. I don't. And wanting to take away guns. I don't. And so the threats that I faced because of my Democratic affiliation, I think, were because people were misinformed and they made assumptions and they didn't understand. And, that once again, that's an uncomfortable conversation. I'm all about transparency. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about what's happening, and then maybe we can fix this.
Yeah. Have the threats died down, Christina?
Yes.
Okay. Good. And it's so tough, I think, especially online. We see it here, where in the comments, people are just so crude, and they don't take any accountability for what they had to say. And is there a way going forward that we can find a good way to communicate with each other? What does that look like for you?
First and foremost, I think we do need to acknowledge everyone has their First Amendment right. You have the right to speak. However, I think that we need to have a collective understanding that your right to speak isn't always covered if it involves hate speech, if it involves death threats. If you step over the line, then it becomes inappropriate. And I think in order to relate to each other better, we just need to be a little bit more cognizant that everyone is struggling right now. You know, we're facing the pandemic, we're facing the murder of George Floyd, we're facing this political movement. And I encourage people to have spirited political conversations, debate each other, state your opinions, talk about what matters most to you. But at the same time, let's be respectful of each other. Let's not call each other terrible, horrible names, and let's just engage with each other as people, but also with the respect that, you know, we are still people.
All right, Christina Cardinelli, the Democratic candidate for Chautauqua County's New York State Assembly seat. Thank you for joining us today. Hard conversation to have, but certainly one that's at the top of minds of many here. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much, and I look forward to having these conversations, and, you know, let's fix this.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now let's get a check of our First Defense weather forecast with Dakota.
Oh, it was a muggy start this morning. The observed low temperatures this morning, 69 here in town, 73 in Dunkirk, and 74 over in Erie. That's where we started the day, and it's even warmer right now. This is a live look from atop of the Doubletree Hotel downtown. We're at 81 right now as of noon hour. We got a healthy southwest breeze at 12. That is helping at least a little bit, but that's not helping. The dew point at 70, so it feels like a sticky 84 degrees outside. Oh! And speaking of the dew point, there it is, up into that oppressive category, almost near tropical humidity today. So the clothes are just going to stick to you. You know what we call this? The air you can wear. I mean, that's basically what it is today. But we shove a cold front through the area tonight. Down goes the muggy meter for tomorrow. Much more pleasant and refreshing air comes our way for the end of the week. The lakeshore is going to be the place to be today. I'm not sure of the swimming regulations on some of the beaches, but I know you can take your boat out on Lake Erie. 65 and 64 is the water temperature. Southwest wind 5 to 10 knots, and wave heights about 1 to 2 feet. Now, looking into tonight, the Storm Prediction Center maintains a slight risk. That's a level 2 out of 5 across all of western New York and northwestern Pennsylvania. There's actually a moderate risk right here for portions that's basically near Detroit, Motor City. Likely some very violent, severe storms there this afternoon. But here we just got a slight risk, but that's still significant. 2 out of 5, and this is for later today into tonight. So new timing here based on the new model guidance. About 10 o'clock tonight, a line of showers and storms will spark out ahead of the cold front. They'll move through by about 2 a.m. And again, strong gusty winds, maybe some heavy rainfall and large hail will be the main threats with these storms as they move on through tonight. And of course, we'll be here keeping our eyes on it. This is what's left of Cristobal right here, and it's throwing tropical moisture up here. And again, already in parts of Detroit, there's already a severe thunderstorm watch out here for this afternoon. We'll take you through a future scan here locally, and again, nothing through the afternoon. Watch this line of showers spark with the front. The front is right back here, so the line of showers and storms spark ahead of it. This is by about 10 o'clock. It'll move on through after midnight, and then again, any one of these storms could contain damaging wind gusts and some large hail and heavy rainfall. So make sure you have a way of getting warnings tonight. That all clears out of here tomorrow. An early shower or storm. Otherwise, the afternoon will be dry, much cooler, and less humid. As always, download the WNY News Now app for iPhone, Android. Best news app in the entire southern tier. And these two guys right here make our forecast right here in-house. We're the only ones in the southern tier to do that. So tonight, showers and thunderstorms, especially early. Some of them strong to severe tonight, especially, you know, before midnight, a little after midnight. Another muggy night, 60 to 66. The wind shifts south, eventually shifting southwest overnight. Next 7 days of your life coming up. 72 tomorrow. That's refreshing with with actually lower humidity as well. 75 on Friday. Should be mainly dry. The weekend is looking cooler and mainly dry at this point. Temperatures down into the 60s. That's some nice refreshing air. But temperatures return into the lower to mid 70s by early next week. News continues 24/7 at WNYNewsNow.com, and also, as I mentioned, on the mobile app. We'll see you right back here tomorrow at noon. Have a good day.